Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davidge. I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, DeKalb County Public Library, and Poetry Atlanta Incorporated, welcome to our annual Voices Carry poetry reading. A few things before we get started with our formal presentation this evening. We have live transcriptions. So for those of you that need that service, you can locate the CC button at the top or the bottom of your device. And when you click on the CC button, you can make the font as large or as small as you're required so you can read it. Also, if you'd like to ask any of our poets questions after the official presentation this evening, please do so by using the Q&A feature. You'll find that button at the top or the bottom of your device. Click on it and then type your question into the chat box so we can answer it in turn. You can also ask questions in the chat, which we'll be monitoring. We'd also like to let you know that in the chat, we will have links so you can purchase the poetry books with these wonderful authors this evening. We'd like to thank Karis Books for being the bookseller for this and providing us with those links. Right now, I'd like to introduce Collin Kelley, who's headed up Poetry Atlanta for as long as I've been working with the Georgia Center for the Book. For over 2 decades, he's been the editor of Atlanta In Town magazine, and he has also written the poetry books Midnight in a Perfect World and Render. He's also the author of his trilogy of fiction books, the Venus trilogy, which features the works Leaving Paris and Conquering Venus. For those works, he was nominated for the Townsend Prize and the Georgia Author of the Year. We're so very pleased to work with Poetry Atlanta on this very, very special event and have been working with them on these events for many years. So right now, I'd like to turn it over to Collin Kelley, who will introduce our poets this evening. Collin?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Collin Kelley, and this is the 18th annual Voices Carry reading. We've been doing this for 18 years, which is just amazing. So thank you for being here tonight. And we're doing this by Zoom because we have 2 international poets with us tonight. We have Mark Ward, who is in Dublin, Ireland, and we have Cecilia Woloch, who's in Resny, Poland tonight. So it's, by virtue of doing these on Zoom, we can have an international group of poets reading for you tonight. So to get us started, I'm going to tell you a little bit about each of these poets, and then I'm going to read a poem to get us kicked off, and then we'll get on with the program this evening. So first up tonight is Mark Ward, and he is the author of the chapbooks Circumference and the prose haiku hybrid Hike, and he has a brand new full-length collection called Nightlight coming in 2023. And then we have Teri Elam, who's an award-winning poet and writer from Atlanta, and she's had poems published in Prairie Schooner, Slice Magazine, Limp Wrist, Auburn Avenue, and many more. And then we have Michael Walls, who has a brand new collection of poetry out. I've got it right here. I've been reading it. It's called Climbing an Unnamed Mountain. It's just out from Kelsey Books, and I highly recommend it. And we will close this evening with multi-award winning poet Cecilia Woloch, who is the author of some fantastic collections, including Sigan, Late, and Carpathia. And right now, as I said, she's in Poland teaching on a Fulbright scholarship in Poland. So welcome to them. And I'm so glad that they could join us tonight. And so I'm going to kick off and I'm going to read a poem for you. This is forthcoming in my next collection that's coming out at the end of next year. It's called Wonder and Wreckage. It's a new and selected collection. And it's also going to be in the Dolly Parton anthology, Let Me Say This, which is being edited by Dustin Brookshire and Julie Blomeke. It's going to be out from Madville Publishing early next year, and I'm thrilled that this poem is going to be in both those books in the same year. This is called Roosters and Hens. And if you've seen the movie 9 to 5, you'll get the reference. Rumors fly fast in southern towns, like the one about my grandfather shacked up with a 16-year-old he found hitchhiking to Florida on New Year's Eve. He'd be in jail today, front page news and canceled. But in 1981, rural Georgia, he's just more grist for the gossip mill. He parades Missy, his little gal, at the gas station, five and dime, buys her milkshakes at the Dairy Queen, makes her go in the store to buy his six-packs and cigarettes. The day he brings her to my house, my mother stands cross-armed and disgusted in the driveway as they argue over his indiscretion. Missy sits in the car, snapping her gum and singing along to Here You Come Again on the radio. I've got that 45, I say shyly, leaning in the window. Her eyes light up. She looks me up and down, reassessing my worth. Dolly is my idol, she says. I want to be just like her, boobs and all. Only 4 years separate us, but Missy in her tight jeans, tank top, and tall blonde hair seems much older, worldly and wise, sure of herself. And when she casually asks me if I've ever kissed a boy, I feel seen for the first time. Missy tells me absolutely nothing, changes the subject when I ask about her family, school, or where she's from. My grandfather drops us off at the movie theater to see 9 to 5. Missy slings an arm around my shoulder as we sing along loudly to Dolly's theme song. I can feel the other moviegoers staring, tutting and harumphing their disapproval. When the scene where Mr. Hart chases Doralee around his desk and she threatens to get the gun out of her purse and shoot his dick off, Missy laughs and claps. That's just like your granddaddy, but he ain't caught me yet. Our eyes meet in the dark, and even at 12, her implication is unmistakable. You'll just have to shoot him then, I say. I won't tell. Her shrieking laugh brings a chorus of shh, and I taste her bubblegum lipstick for hours after she kisses me unexpectedly on the lips. Missy is gone by spring. She disappears into the night with an envelope full of Social Security cash and Grandpa's gun, doesn't leave a note. He rages for days, duped and lonely, begs Mom for money to buy his Pabst tall boys. I don't tell them that Missy made one last stop before she left town. The morning after her disappearance, I find a small brown bag propped on the windowsill of my room. Inside is the 45 of 9 to 5, with big-haired busty Dolly on the sleeve, marching off to work, carrying a paint roller like a staff. I've lost track of how many times I've watched 9 to 5, spoken Dolly's dialogue back to the TV, and wondered if Missy ever had to use my grandfather's gun, turned any roosters into hens to get where she was going. Thanks, everyone. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark Ward, who is in Dublin right now.
Thank you so much, Colin. That was wonderful, and I'm very excited for the Dolly anthology. Firstly, thank you for the invite, and thank you for having me read for Georgia Center of the Book and Poetry Atlanta. I want to kick off with a poem that is, I've been getting reacquainted with my first collection, which I finished pre-pandemic, but it's out next year because of the world. So I'm going to open with a few poems from that. And the first is called Poem for Actors, and it's after John. The room is filled with light, our bodies heaving with air. We are present in a way no one understands the lives we flee from. Documenting impermanence is a form of strength. This palm love is codified among the slats where we distill into performance. The lines alive, transformed in utterance from the author's burden, the audience's expectation. What this means is our translucence, the utter destruction of days. For this is what we are made for. That moment of disappearance where we are done with pretending we are not the dawn, backlighting the empty stage, the applause. Now we are your disbelief, your pause at our encroaching night. It's another poem from Nightlight, and it's called Local. A knot of desiccated shop fronts. The festival comprised of 4 floats. A souvenir shop spills its unsold stock out onto the street. This town is a drive-through, its residents siphoned off into veins, bled into the outdoors, space to oneself. The hill could be a mountain or a little up and over, a detour of desire lines worn into the earth, the history of exploration, escape plan. To meet the horizon, one must become a cloud, a lance, a microcosm, a vista, a picture postcard to the folks without trails laid out. The locals don't walk here, they rescind their sky, allow meaning to disappear behind day trip days and eyes, and reimagine life in its confines. The splinter between the pub and the post office. Home, a winter whose length you can walk without ever leaving. I'm particularly delighted to be here with Colin because this poem is dedicated to Colin, who very kindly threw a lovely eye over Nightlight at a very crucial stage. So this is set in London, August 2014, called Upon Seeing a Streetcar Named Desire, and it's for Collin Kelley. I rest against the bar. The sobs subside. A headache trumpets its arrival. With their applause, the audience turned its face from the shadow. Blanche Dubois, subsumed into their summer night. Drenched from the day's rain, we came as tourists to be entertained by her destruction. Fools think she does not see the world, can only rose tint it with fancy, or, failing that, liquor. She can spot the errant, the temporary through her haze, to cast aspersions like prophecies, within which she is negated, free to bounce to the best possible circumstance, each reality tailored to fit, each foundation born to cover cracks. In her princess dress, Joker lipstick smeared every body with blame. The heart sometimes can no longer maintain. Let us remember her disappeared face as she is promenaded off, whilst guilt roots everyone to the spot. She is calm because there's no longer any history or family or Blanche Dubois, just the sound of a body slumping against strangers, hoping to stick. I feel lightheaded. I knock back 2 beers for the shock, a learned behavior from a Southern belle. Sometimes in life, people are not always saved or punished. Sometimes you cry for the ending you didn't get. You ask me if I'm okay, if I want to go. The 2-day rain has abated. Night is here. Um, this is the last poem from Nightlight that I'm going to read in this session. There's a few more after this. And this is a poem about mental health that I wrote during a very dark time, and it actually scared me when I wrote it. It's called The Imaginary Friend. The imaginary friend pinches inside the center of my chest like an axial graph folded and ripped, an extra dimensional shift to shit cinched with the rented smile of a guest. He suspects that his greatest achievement is unraveling the probable, cause traveling without effect, leading life only with the introspect, the what ifs, your standard issue rejects. He perfects his wind tunnel soft whisper, appearing almost apologetic at his fissures dotted around reality, each idle thought an enemy, each slit quickening the tangled nerves around it, each brush becomes a thicket, drowning my vision on the waterline, revising life into a supine circle of salt. I have a few more poems, and this is in the second collection that I'm working at the moment, which is called Real Estate. And there's a ghazal sequence about my cat who sadly passed away, and I passed him through history. This was the very first one, and it's based on the idea of a hope. Lately, everywhere smells of piss, cat piss, particularly piss as pungent as a mad bitch caterwauling, carping, all piss and vinegar over nothing, fresh water, food, litter, still piss as punishment, piss like a snitch whispering names, death warrants. Piss, he burns down the house, dousing it in his only liquid. Piss in corners on clothes with your smells where he knows you alone walk. Piss, and it's only when I list this I realize he's taking the piss. It's hard to take when family turns and you sleep, wake to piss and a shit out in the open, having made the house cornerless. There has to be an end to this. I nod. The cat glares, starts to piss. The next two poems are from a pamphlet that I've been working on, that I recently finished, and it's ekphrastic response poems to dead queer male artists. Don't know how I landed on that, but that's the remit. So these are two two response poems to two paintings. And the first is a Henry Bishop painting called A Street in Carrara. The windows are abandoned. Plasterboard leans against the wall like a teen smoking. Mold collects at the base of the apartments, a black mark smudged. Mothers spit wash dirty faces, scowling at traffic. Jimmy's uncle's beer. The fridge left out in the sun. Debris smashed in half and quarters is still debris. The developer wrote them off. Marco and his mother live in the empty building. She won't survive winter. There is nothing beyond this street. They throw rocks at cars that dare to pass. Mateo beats up his best friend. The others know not to ask questions, show pity. Today, Jimmy arrives empty-handed. Mateo is too sober for the sunlight blinding like a single bulb that swings. Marco, trying to stop him, gets a smack. His mother, slowly coughing up her lungs, can't stop it. Marco doesn't fight back. Jimmy never fought anyone. Mateo allows himself to succumb to gravity, falling into the rubble. A moment to swan dive, a new scar, maybe. Instead, he sees her in the window. He stopped coughing. She's smiling, looking at the birds bisecting the blue sky. The others are busy staring down the world as it speeds away. Mateo hands around a hip flask. They're pretending tomorrow will be exactly the same. The next poem is part of that series, which is called Masters. And this is after a Paolo Tritchu painting called Study of a Male Nude. Stomach, groin, and legs, the rest of him rubbed out, black marks obscuring his too knowing expression. What his arms are doing, spread wide. A parody of love, coveted legs like a spider advancing, the cock softening, still bloodful, it lies against his stomach, coquettish, performative, to be wanted if only for the coincidence of a body so unlike yours. Hungering, you reduce him to something unfinished. This last poem is in three parts. And I was having one of those private conversations that one has with poet friends about other poets, and this poem came out. So this is after a conversation on queer poetry with my dear friend Eric Norris, and it's called Menage, and it's in three parts, and it's a lot. 1, body. You fuck him like a necrophiliac, concerned only with his scrotal sac bobbing rhythmically and voluntarily against you. You prepare to vault into a void. Bodiless, to you, he's patchwork, a warm dildo avoiding the human, experiencing this movement. You absolutely no string, and you're liquid, undone, vulnerable, and tepid. His body irritatingly complete. He reaches out to you, and the conceit is broken. The room floods with specifics, a load splashed across its chest, clocks ticking, his smile unfurling, the sound of your name. 2, embody. You write your poems as if you're following a trail of body parts like fresh breadcrumbs. You've trimmed away his body, leaving holes lined up on the picnic blanket. Waiting in poems, orifices can be alive, distilled, you say, but you are still body. Lust unzips your connective tissue. You're a dick, you're a mouth, you're an asshole, mechanically thrusting, closing, floating above you. The impulse for all of this dissipates and you find yourself mid-fuck, writing lines to give reason to distance. 3, disembodied. You aspire to being a person in love with something more than a body. You aspire to being more a person than in love with something, a body, A body aspires to being a person in love with something more than you. You aspire to being a person, body in love with a thing more than some. You being something more, aspire a person to in love with a body. You're in love with a body more than being some persona aspirating. You're a person embodying love as nothing. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Colin. And I'm so happy to be here with everybody, and Cecilia, who's, I would count her as one of my first instructors in Atlanta. So it's just a pleasure to be able to read with her as well. I'm going to be reading some family poems. I've been with family, throughout the pandemic, and, been thinking about some things. And my mom is 95. She's suffering from dementia, but she has a very good sense of humor, and I learned a lot about her. So some of these poems about her childhood. Her nickname is Puddin'. You need to know that. Her father's nickname is Bradora. His name is David, and her mother's name was Alice, and her nickname is Air. The blues wake up Puddin' at 10. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, traditional Negro spiritual. My mama disappeared one day, left me and Bradora alone. Muckrakers tattletale, say mama stuffed a clean pillowcase full, and by first light went missing, no farewell. Say Miss Mamie, who lives behind our tobacco field, came through here right before, took my mama, her packed pillowcase and her big Bible, sneaking her out the back door. See, my mama real name's Alice, but we always call her Air. She ain't tell us otherwise. Seems she didn't much care. Now just me, Bradora, and my brother William. Sarah and Delzora been run away from this place. My sister Delzora left her big fat baby Pearl that next day, like air, gone without a trace. Sometimes I dream mama's a cyclone or one of them wind gusts across Pamlico Sound. But she must be a cool breeze come through October, much as Bradora be cussing cause air ain't nowhere to be found. Some days I wake up happy, forget I'm here on my own, forget mama's way up north in Harlem, till I recall her Bible ain't made its way home. Bradora, the giant slayer. My daddy real name David, like the giant slayer found in the good book. Same book he seemed to forget about now. Most folk this way call him Bradora, cause he only conquered my mama Air, who beat us all up cooking by the cockroach, fixing biscuits, grits and gravy, curls napped, gone back from sweat, back soaking wet, house coat clinging to air skin, warbling songs, prophesying how she'd get out of here one day before moonset. Still away home. Lord, I ain't got long to be here. She'd always sing out loud as the trail from Bradora's country ham escaped the cast iron pot, heading back where I slept. My daddy smacked belching everything down before air, bone tired, could catch her breath. Her heated body barely there. Then Bradora faded into the pitch, not back till skies black blue. When he left the house today, air took her stuff, left too. Puddin' turns 90, refuses help, tells her daughter why. Why? If I'm not the one doing the holding, I don't feel comfortable being held. Air came back after my first blood, after I taught Pearl to walk, run, after I taught my own self to run, stay. I kept the house, even kept my niece safe from her own self. I made the biscuits from scratch for Bradora, Pearl, and me, watched them rise, just like I rose up every day. My mama was my own high hip. I'd carry Pearl on every day, before and after school and back. The same hip I had to replace a lifetime later. Why? Sometimes I ask myself why they left me to take care of it all. Then I let it go. This poem. I watched my mother through a baby monitor. I watched my mother through a baby monitor, something not available to her when she needed to watch me. Seems my chronic colic was a pain in her ass, but also how she knew I wasn't dead. One night, she discovered me covered in shit from head to toe, cooing unaware. Knowing her, had iPhones been around then, this moment would have been caught, a treasure saved in her lifetime trove of hijinks and laughs, ever at my expense. Now I keep watch, a helicopter mother to my own, like when she's too still, I zoom in close, hold my breath, pray her chest lifts, lowers again. Still, if dementia unstills her before my grande pike place, I whisper, go back to sleep. An infant with my own timetable, she probably did the same. I've never regretted not having kids, but I'll admit, monitor duty has given me pause, because one day, if blessed as she, I'll be her again. And who the hell's gonna watch me? I have two more poems. So that was all on the Bonnet side of the family, my mom's side, and there's one poem on the Elam side of the family. And it's really about my aunt Dean, who probably would have been my favorite aunt had I got a chance to, really get to know her. So this is called Asylum. The epigraph. The Elams were never a cohesive ethnic group, but rather a federation of disparate peoples. Ancient History Encyclopedia. Asylum. From the beginning, they seemed doomed. Son of Shem, descendant of Noah, Elam, interpreted as forever or hidden or high, depending upon where you look, was once a man, a people, and a land, conquered. Even a millennium later, lost. This family as organism copulates, procreates, then eats its own limbs. Like an octopus stressed, this family chops and bites at its own existence, then spits itself up again. Like Aunt Dean, who bejeweled picture frames with colorful bits of broken glass. Aunt Dean, who played Moonlight Sonata, always in allegretto rather than andante, as if she resolved early to not eat her own limbs, not learn to play her own funeral song. Aunt Dean, who kept journals of prose her sister stored away after her death, but now cannot find. Aunt Dean, whose gorgeous, dark 6-foot frame was once found bent and folded in Grandma's antique chifforobe the night before Daddy took her back to Central State, Milledgeville. And one final poem, Collin kind of got me a little inspired. I have a Dolly Parton poem, so I think I'll read that one to close off. It's called A Dolly Parton Kind of Love. In this green and yellow kitchen lived this family soul. Home, fish fried Fridays, Mrs. Buttersworth Saturdays, between its chants, Oh Mighty Isis and Soul Train. Beans snapped, collards rolled and chopped, simmering, its sweet peppery pot liquor, their moonshine. Near nightfall, when the sisters' nappy, unfettered hair would be reimagined for church the next day, kitchen now smoking, hot comb on the stove, radio blasting the Ohio players, roller coaster of love, say what? This, before you grew up, met the one that got her way, then got away. Your soul trying not to become the Jonah to her well. When all you needed was that Dolly Parton kind of love, she'd warble through the tiny TV in that kitchen on her push-up pink parasol to walk to a swing hanging from a cloud, rapping, "I hope life treats you kind, and I hope you have all you dreamed of." Her voice, peppermint stick goodness to your elementary school eyes, ears, and heart. Back when you first felt butterflies flutter, a feeling you didn't know what was then, but you've chased with a net ever since. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Colin, and I feel honored to be reading with this group of poets. So I'm very happy to be here tonight. I'm sorry I was late. I'm happy I'm here. I'm going to read mostly from my my newest book, Climbing an Unnamed Mountain, and I'm going to read from only the third part of the book. The third part of the book is it's all about the Marshall Islands and especially the Bikini Islands and Atoll. The excuse me. At the end of just a little bit, I think I need to give just a little bit of history. At the end of the Second World War, the UN made the Marshall Islands a trust territory, and it named the U.S. as the only trustee. So for 30 years, the U.S., the United States, and in a large way, the United Navy controlled the Marshall Islands. And for 30 years, they abused the Marshall Islands in all sorts of ways. I'm only going to touch on what I'm reading is only going to touch on a couple of the ways. I don't think I need to say much more about that because I think you can tell from the poems. I don't think you need anything more than that. I'm beginning with actually four poems actually. The poems are long poems, so I'm only reading portions of all four of the poems and leaving out a lot. But I think I can tell the story I'm trying to tell with leaving out what I'm leaving out. Yolet Yin Anij. 1. 1000 BC. Settlers from the Southeast Asia migrate to isolated Pacific islands astraddle the equator. They call their new home Yolet Yin Anij, words that means gift from God. 2. Ever present, the sea, the heat. Yolet Yin Anij moves to the rhythm of waves, breaking on the shore, receding with its ebb. The first sound heard upon waking, the last before sleep. Because of the heat, both men and women bare their bodies. Like the seabirds, children run naked on the beach. To feed themselves, they catch shad in the lagoon, plant and tend taro, and gather papayas, coconuts, breadfruit, bananas from the trees and plants. They make canoes from the trunks of palm trees. From the fronds, they make homes, skirts that both women and men wear, and sails to catch the wind that pushes their proas across the water. For as long as the oldest elders can remember, this is how it has been. 1819, American missionaries arrive. One day, men whose skin has no color and who cover their bodies with cloth arrive on a big ship larger than a proa. These strange men offer cloth and food in exchange for coconut seeds. Then they leave, but they keep coming back, always wanting more seeds. They bring missionaries who tell the people about Jesus, who say that if the people worship the white man's God, they will go to a place called heaven when they die. But the women must cover their breasts, else they will go to hell and burn forever when they die. People begin to worship the white man's God. They build a church. The women start covering their breasts. Mothers make children wear clothes. They forget their gods. One Sunday after church, February 1946, everyone was here to hear Commodore Ben Wyatt, the man the U.S. Navy appointed as governor. Governor Wyatt came decked out in dress navy blues, a salad bar of ribbons on his chest. He spoke from the pulpit. He began telling his audience nuclear weapons were good because they would bring peace to the world. He told the entire population of Bikini they were the chosen people, like the children of Israel. They were told if they should agree to move to a nearby island so the US could test atomic weapons. The governor said if they agreed to leave, it would be for the good of mankind and would end all world wars. And they could come back home when testing was over. Return to the Promised Land, 1972. Like the children of Israel, approximately 100 Bikini evacuees returned to their homeland, built a church, built houses, planted taro in the same dirt as their fathers, gathered coconuts from the same trees as their mothers, swam and caught shad on the reef, on a reef in their ancestral lagoon. Soon, strange things began happening. Many women had miscarriages. The fish made everyone sick. Everybody felt tired, always tired. Doctors, scientists came to study them, stuck their arms with needles, took their blood, collected their urine, studied their blood and urine with microscopes, cut open coconuts and fish, looking inside, tested the water, the dirt. They found radiation, the silent thief that stole their babies, robbed them of their health, and the water they drank, the food they ate, the lagoon they swam and fished in, the dirt they walked on, inside their bodies. Navy ships took them away again. Operation Crosswords, July 1, 1946. First nuclear bomb test at Bikini. Waves lap, gentle on the beach. In the lagoon, a single empty ship lies at anchor. Monotonous drone of approaching airplane, heard by no one. From a B-29 named Big Stink, a bomb named Gilda, Rita Hayworth, painted on its side, detonates at 580 feet, misses its target. July 5th, 1946. Paris swimming pool. Exotic dancer Micheline Bernardini introduces a new bathing suit to the world. Louis Riyad, automobile engineer, fashion designer, called his creation Bikini because he said, like the atom bomb, the bikini is small and devastating. Bikini Atoll, a string of pearls, 23 dots, middle of Pacific Ocean, strung around a lagoon. Each dot so small, total landmass, only 2 square miles. Highest elevation, 7 feet above water at low tide. Between 1946 and 1953, site of 23 nuclear and thermonuclear weapons tests. Soil and water too toxic for human habitation because of radiation. Name stolen by a bathing suit. Future existence washing away in rising seas. Inhabited 3,000 years ago. Permanent population today, 0. Now, if I have any more time, I'm going to read two poems, or one poem probably, because I think I'm running over time. One poem from an earlier book, Stacking Winter Wood. And this poem is, the title of the poem I'm going to read is A Drone Pilot. And I'm a big fan of President Obama. One thing I didn't like about him, though, one thing, yeah, probably the only thing, is his policy on assassinations with drones. And this is a poem that I wrote, I guess, about 10 years ago. And it's in the voice of a drone pilot. And it's roughly based on an interview that I heard on NPR. You can't get what night shifts really like till you've worked it. Fighting to stay awake, finally getting off, and there's this piss yellow strip of light just appearing there on top of the parking lot, telling you it's already tomorrow. Believe me, they don't call it graveyard shift for nothing. Same computer screen every night, trailing the same dude around the same desert mountains, raggedy ass little towns. A long way from Vegas, man. Fingers burning from too hot coffee on a too thin cup. Last night, I got special orders. I was waiting. Timing's got to be just right when it's off someplace from everybody else. Right then, my fingers slipped on the coffee cup. Thought I had scalded my damn dick off. I almost didn't catch him when he stepped out of the car. Just before it hit, something small came running up. At first, I thought it might be a kid, but my photographer claimed it was a dog. Then I had all that extra paperwork, kept me late. Now the sun's way up in the sky. Not much time to grab me any extra sleep today. Got to pick up Amanda and Jason from soccer practice at 4. Thank y'all.
Hi, thank you, Michael. That was terrific. I love Michael's new book. Everybody should buy it. And I love those poems about the Bikini Atoll. Really terrific to hear that. Some older work. Teri, lovely to be with you. It's been too long. And wonderful to hear your work. Really just a joy, just a treat. I'm joining you all from, and I feel tempted to try to teach everyone how to say the name of the place, the name of the city, the smallish kind of, well, less small today city where I'm living is called, it's spelled R-Z-E-S-Z-O with an accent W. And it's pronounced Rzeszów. Okay, Rzeszów. So the map of the former Galicia is behind me. Rzeszów is in southeastern Poland, near the beginning of the Carpathian Mountains and about 50 miles from the border of Ukraine. So it's been an interesting time to be here. But this has always been an interesting place to me. I dreamed of the Carpathians as a child. I wasn't sure they were real. I wasn't sure Carpathia was a real place. But whether it was real or not, it was my ancestral home. So I came back here. I found my way here almost as soon as I was able, after it was possible, to travel behind what was once the Iron Curtain. So I'm going to read some poems. They're also family poems. Teri, thank you for reading. Thank you again for reading those wonderful family poems. And I'm going to begin with a poem. I'm going to read a couple of older poems and a couple of newer poems. And the first poem was published in a chapbook that came out from two Sylvias a few years ago, and it's part of a full-length collection I'm sending around that's called In the Name of Whatever Country This Is. My family came from this area, which has always been a borderlands and where identities have always been, shall we say, in flux. And it's a place that was ravaged by history and by politics. This is for my great aunt. It's actually for both of my great aunts, but specifically addressed to one of them. We called our great aunts Teta, which is something like the Ukrainian word for aunt, but not exactly. Teta, for my great aunt. Teta, it's winter in Pittsburgh again. Dark brick city of smokestacks and soot. And we are walking up Broadway Avenue past billboards and vacant lots, through the slush of snow and cinders as the streetcars slur past, ghosts in our flowered babushkas and shabby coats, shopping bags weighing down our arms. We've bought cans of beets, heads of cabbage, meat ground fresh will squeeze into fists. And we don't flinch when the crew cut kids hiss DPs at our backs. We're not ashamed anymore, at last, to have come from nowhere, nothing, dirt. The village you fled as a young girl gone, the houses burned and the fields you worked into rows of green, grown wild again. Once you spooned honey into my mouth, because my arms and legs were like sticks, because I itched and wept and wanted more than sweetness to know who I was. But you sighed. No one wants to remember that stuff. How you came to this new country stinking of ship, how you hustled bootleg hooch for cash, your own smooth flesh for a rich man's song, the rich growing fat on the fat of the land, while you buried one child in a pauper's grave, raised two others on blood money, spit, all your sins in a basket too heavy to lift, they said. Your body already a heap of grief, the day you slipped in the alley and fell in the garden you'd sown with ground bone shit under that slit of tin-washed sky. And then you never stood up again. You shrank in your skin in your narrow bed, blind, but you gripped my hand and sang the old song of the little bird in a tongue I still don't understand. Dark syllables fluttering just out of reach until you were shadow, whisper, less, your whole life a ragged story, stitched into breath, unstitched again. Teta, we've never been much in this world, although we were many, too many once, the children's children who circled your table, blowing out candles, eyes tilted like yours. Our face is the same face all over again, the face of the stranger wherever we turned, my cousin, the Cossack, the Gypsy, the Jew, my cousin, the dark Slav, my cousin, the slave. And we'll never belong to this place where you came with your one suitcase tied with rope, with your shape like a shadow risen from earth, some mute root pulled from a meadow where wildflowers blazed in the summer and winter lay down. This is America, Teta. You're dead. And our dying means nothing here. Give me your bags. I think somebody has their microphone turned on who maybe isn't meant to. I don't know. And this is a shorter poem about finding my way back here. Return. In the year of the poppy, year of the cornflower, year of the meadow and yarrow and buttercup, year of the thistle and ox-eyed daisy, in the spring of the year of our Lord, of the train, the engine, the ticket, the map, of the landscape of leaf shadow, willow, white birch, blurring past in the smoke of the burning fields, in the blue mist of evening, the clanging of bells, ringing out for the living, the dead, of the last great war, which is one long war, of the ancient soldier come in his uniform to stand hopefully at the door of the house of no mirrors, swept of ash, to ask, have the Germans already left? 60 years after the forests were flushed, of the last of our enemies, last of the partisans, of the holy republic of mud, of the blood mixed with earth, of the bones of itself, of which no one knows but the trees anymore, of which no one speaks but the child made of grass. I'm going to read something more recent. This is called The Wars Between the Borders That Were Not There. Some people from the village where my grandmother was born would come to identify themselves as Ukrainian. Some people, everybody was forcibly removed from the village, everyone. And of course, the Jewish and Gypsy people were sent to concentration camps, but others were removed for having sided with the Ukrainian nationalist movement or having sided with the communists. So this is kind of about that, and it's for my grandmother, who was a communist. The wars between the borders that were not there. You had to know how bad the Nazis were to have loved the communists in 1946, in that nightmare time on earth, in that place between the wars, between the borders that were not there. You couldn't know who would be more brutal. You had to take your chances, guess. If someone came knocking in the night, it could be your neighbor, your enemy. It could be a soldier come for your daughter or for your wife or only for bread. Now, who could betray you? Who would betray you? On which side should you stand? There was no safe place to stand. Some stood in lines and froze to death. Some marched to where they were told to march. Some set their houses and fields on fire, then fled to the forest and buried themselves. Many disappeared in this way. The earth a shallow grave, the earth turned over, leaking bones. So who were the martyrs? Who were the killers? Who was a partisan, your kind? If you had to choose between blood and water, there was no human way to choose. So what had been wasted? What had been ruined? When it was over, what had you saved? And if you were far from the burning fields and a country that made you a criminal, what made you more or less alive than the dead of the country you'd left behind? So you took the cash that was handed to you. You changed your name. You changed your clothes. What I mean to say is that I forgive you, whatever deal with the devil you made. I have never gone hungry except from spite. I have never lifted a dead child in my arms. I have never had to kill a thing I loved to not be killed. Listen, I don't know who you were, but there was a world, and you stood in it once. Then you fell through the door of yourself. Forgive me. I think I'll just read one more poem. Is that right, Colin? I
Yes.
didn't too closely at the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. I stopped taking antidepressants this year, and now I'm not depressed, but I noticed that, as I used to do before I started taking antidepressants, I cry all the time. This is a poem that's for my grandmother and those great aunts that I mentioned earlier. It's called A Place in the Music. Once in a dream that wasn't a dream, I saw them walking away from me, or not away, but just ahead. All my dead beloveds in the shimmer of silvery wind. They knew I was following and kept on, arms linked, walking side by side on a road between fields of waist-high grass, wind tossing their hair and the hems of the flowered dresses the women wore. Some uncle or other, still a boy, running after the rest. Was that joy? And what it said to me, this picture in my mind, was to not be afraid, that it's only a kind of magic death, and the story's rich, the story goes on. I was behind them, watching them walk into the wind, when I heard the hum beginning inside me, a place in the music, high and sweet, as if they were singing, or also heard the song I'd begun to hear, and were glad, and loved me still. The sky that silver too, although none of them turned around. Thank you so much, and thank you again, Colin, Mark, Teri, Michael, and Joe. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Cecilia.
Thank
That was
you.
beautiful. Thank you to all the poets tonight. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Teri. Thank you, Michael. Beautiful readings tonight. I really just enjoyed everyone so much.
And I loved that Missy poem.
Oh,
Oh my
thanks.
God, she's my hero.
And I love her. I wonder whatever happened to her. Hopefully one day I'll find out.
I hope that someday she reads that poem and finds and knows it's her and
I
finds.
hope she does.
I hope so, Colin.
Because that's really her name. So if she's out there.
If the
Yeah.
poem weren't so long, I'd save up to buy it a billboard.
Yeah,
So we could do Burma shave signs.
that's true. We could.
Missy,
Hey,
where
Missy.
are you?
Yeah. Hey, Missy, where are you? Yeah. Yeah.
And Colin, you said that one's going to be in the Dolly Parton anthology?
The Dolly Parton anthology that's coming out in January from Madville. It's called Let Me Say This. And Dustin and Julie are working on it right now. So they're getting it together. So very exciting.
And is it also in the new and selected?
And it's going to be in the new and selected, yes, in next September. Yeah.
Great.
The reason why I asked about the Dolly book, we have a date. February 2nd is going to be the Dolly reading.
Yes.
Wow.
At the library. So
it's going to be live?
It's going to be live. Yes.
And I should be back in the US by then, but don't think.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we'll see where we are in our technological upgrades to do live and streaming, but the Julie and Dustin's idea was to try and get as many of the local regional poets who were featured in the Dolly book on stage to read. So it will be a hootenanny.
It will be. It will be. So do we have
You should invite Dolly. You should invite Dolly. She would probably come.
Well, I think they're trying to get to Dolly from what I understand. So they're trying to get the book in the gift shop at Dollywood and different things. So hopefully they will make contact.
I don't see any questions. I see a lot of wonderful comments about everybody enjoying the reading. But maybe before we sign off, since we've talked about Colin's new and selected anthology and talked about the Dolly poems, maybe we can go around the room and everybody can say what they're working on and where we can find them reading next. So
who wants to go? Cecilia, you want to go first?
Well, Colin, you and my next reading is with you,
That's right. We're going to be reading in November, on November 13th, right?
along with Corinne Topal, who's another
Yes.
dear friend and
Okay.
fabulous poet. That's the Valley Contemporary Poet Series, and it is on Zoom. So if you're not on somebody's mailing list, put your email in the chat right now, and we'll send you a
Yes.
invitation.
Yep. It's a Sunday afternoon, right?
I think so. It's
Yeah.
going to be night for me, but
Right.
not this late. not
Right.
this- So that's my next
Mark
reading.
and Cecilia, thank you for staying up so late to do this.
Well, you know, I'm 3 o'clock.
You're a
in the-
night owl, Cecilia. I know
You're
you're
very welcome.
But I have
Thank
been
you for
trying to
having
be a
me.
little bit better lately, and now
totally blown it for you.
set me back on my wicked ways. So that's all that I know about that's coming up, is the reading for the Valley Contemporary Poets on November 13th.
Right. That's the only thing for me. And then I'll be hopefully doing the Dolly rating in next year in February.
And I hope that in the spring I'll be able to organize a reading I guest edited a Poland issue, a Poland feature for the Atlanta Review.
Correct.
And that should be out in the spring, and then maybe we'll do something there. Maybe we just like all come to Poland.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
Jump on. Teri, what are you working on?
I will hopefully be at the Dolly reading too. That the poem I read is going to be in the anthology. So and I'm working on this kind of memoir, I guess, of my mom and her life story. Because basically, when she was 10, her mother had to leave her, for her own safety. But I learned about it and trying to take care of her and 90, because she was having dementia, or it was getting worse. And I kept on, was like, Mom, why won't you let me take care of you? And then she slammed her fist on the table and she said, I've been taking care of myself for 80 years. Then it hit me like, oh, and that made me really interested in so really I'm just working on these collection of poems about her life and also about what it's like to work with her and deal, and work with someone and love with someone who has dementia. It's been a really interesting, journey. And she has a great sense of humor, and so do I. And there's been some really funny moments.
God bless you to be able to find the humor in that. So Teri, it's a kind of a memoir story of her life in poems.
In poems, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have about probably 7 or 8 right now, and then I'm just going to bring it to to this 21st century now, because I realized that what happened to her, that she had to take care of her, and really impacted her, not letting anybody take care of her. It's been a real struggle to try to take care of her. She calls me Mom when she's being kind of spicy. So yeah, but that's what I'm working on, poems about my mom and my aunt Dean, who I know Cecilia would recognize. She had to go to Milledgeville, the hospital in Milledgeville twice in her life, Central State Hospital. And I'm really just interested in what happened to her there and getting her records and writing poems about her as well. So that's it.
Teri, what about you, Mark? I know you've got a new book coming out. You have more than one, right?
Yeah, the first collection, Nightlight, is coming out in February on my 40th birthday. So it's going to be a big 40th birthday book release party here at Dublin. So that'll be long lashes, and can't wait. I'm finishing up the second collection at the moment called Real Estate, and I recently finished a pamphlet of painting poems. I read a couple from earlier. So yeah, busy. And I have a reading on Thursday as well in Dublin. So if anyone's in Dublin, you're welcome to come to that.
I wish I could be there. I would love to be in Dublin.
You will be one day.
I will. I love Dublin. It's one of my favorite towns. So I've been there before. I want to come back again. So for sure. Michael, what about you? You just got the new book out. What are you working on now?
Well, I have, I'm kind of vaguely thinking about starting something with formal, more formal than what I've been doing. Right now, I'm kind of dealing with a health issue, and since this came out in August, I haven't really started anything else. As I said, I've been dealing with a health issue, and I'm trying to help the Dems win some seats here in the election.
And let me take a second too to thank Joe and Allie for hosting us as always, and to Karis Books for selling the book. Support your local indie bookstore, more important than ever. Yes, love a poet by poetry, correct. And there's a Q, I see one in the Q&A. Amy Pence says, lovely poems. Thank you, Amy. So I think that's it, everybody. Joe, do you have any parting thoughts?
Nope. It was a wonderful reading as always. Thank you, Collin, for putting this together and letting us be the host for it.
Thank you. Good
Bye,
night,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
y'all.
Care.